Despite being one of the best cartoons in the world, Bluey still has some mistakes. And in today's video, we're going to look at some of them. In the episode, The Creek, something weird happens with Mackenzie. But before we look at this error, we have to take a look at Mackenzie's appearance. He has black and white fur, and his two hind legs have different colors, with the left one having more black fur and the right one having more white fur. But in the episode, something funny occurs near the end. As they return from their trip to the creek, everyone gets dirty and has mud on their feet. But hold on, look at Mackenzie's legs. They were both normal in one scene, but suddenly, they both turned white in the next scene. That's weird. In the episode Asparagus, the Healer family is playing a game where Bingo and Chilli pretend to be an animal. And when Bingo and Chilli attack their neighbor Pat, for a brief moment we can see Bingo's left paw passes through Pat's legs. Seems like Bingo has got some superpowers. Moving on, every Bluey fan knows that Bandit is like a bigger version of Bluey. But besides their size difference, there are some other minor differences between them as well. Despite being mostly blue, Bandit has a different color on one part of his body. Do you know what it is? Bandit's belly has a yellowish hue in the stomach area. But something weird happened with his stomach in the episode Takeaway, where he walks with his belly's normal color, but when he turns around, his belly is all blue. But forget the animation error for a second. The cool part in this scene is that Bandit and Bluey turned out the same way. Like father, like daughter. Again, going back to the episode The Creek, there's a very quick and hard to notice error with one of the fan favorite characters, Mackenzie. When we see Mackenzie coming out of the bushes, we notice that his head is completely black-furred. When in reality, the fur on his head is almost all black, but with white spot right in the middle of his head. It was only a few frames true, but we somehow managed to catch it. And in that same episode, we noticed another error once again involving Mackenzie. As we mentioned, the fur on his head is black, and he has a white stripe right in the middle. But in one scene, we see that half of his head turns black, and the other half becomes completely white. Seems like animators were having a hard time with Mackenzie in this episode. In the episode Seesaw, where we follow Bluey's attempt to defeat Bandit, who is heavier than all of them, and sits on the seesaw to tease the pups. When Bingo and Bluey realize they need help to defeat Bandit, they call their friends to sit on the seesaw. One of their friends is Coco. When Bluey calls Coco, you can clearly see that she has a pair of eyelashes in her eyes. The problem is that when they call Pom Pom to help, and we look back at Coco, she no longer has eyelashes. They simply disappeared. Moving on, in the episode Mum School, we can see Bluey, and as she walks through the living room followed by her mom, Chilli, she kicks a yellow balloon. At that moment, two strange things can be seen, which we can consider two quite obvious animation errors. The first error happens at the exact moment when Bluey kicks the yellow balloon, and surprisingly, the balloon moves before Blue even kicks it. Did the balloon anticipate the hit and moved ahead of time, or was one of the animators a bit too hasty? The second error follows right after the first one in the same scene. As she kicks the balloon, Bluey kind of slides onto the living room rug in the best moonwalking style of singer Michael Jackson. Jokes aside, this sliding movement of Bluey looks very odd and unnatural. If there's one character that frequently appears in these animation error lists, it's Bandit. It seems like the animators enjoy poking fun at him, don't they? And once again, he's dealing with some hair issues, so to speak. This time, it seems like the animation team forgot to put a piece of fur under Bandit's right eye, but this happens very quickly, and immediately after, he's back to normal. I think it's better for Bandit to seek a fur specialist to address this little issue, because it seems like his hair acts on its own. In the episode Feather Wand, where Bingo is playing with magical powers using a feather that makes things super heavy, and then she does it with Bandit's famous yoga ball. Seriously, look at her having so much fun. Hold on, look again. Her snout moves, but her head turns a bit later, creating this weird and funny animation image at the same time. Hardly anyone noticed this little mistake when they watched this episode for the first time. In the episode Takeaway, we can notice a small animation error. When Bluey is playing with Bingo pretending to work at a restaurant and take her customer's order, if you pause the scene at the right moment, you'll see this. Notice that the tip of Bluey's snout moved faster than the rest of her face, and her nose seemed to be hovering in the air. If you have watched Bluey since the beginning, then you would know that during the initial days of the series, Bluey and Bingo shared the same room with each of the sisters having their own bed, One detail that always caught our attention on their beds is that each one has the letter B carved on the back, as it's the first letter of each of the two girls' names. On Bluey's bed, the B is uppercase as she's the older sister, and on Bingo's bed, the B was always lowercase, even when they slept in separate rooms, and you can see the difference. But in the episode Weekend, something very weird happens when the parents put the girls to bed. Right at the end of the episode, we see that the B on Bingo's bed magically changes from a lowercase b to an uppercase B, just like Bluey's bed. In the episode Barbecue, we notice something weird happening with socks. When Bingo accidentally sprays water everywhere by opening the hose too wide, everyone rushes to see the funny situation. But if you look closely at Socks, you'll notice that when she's running to see the scene, look what happens to her snout. Literally, the little puppy's head is turned in one direction, while her snout is turned in the other. And that's not all. When she gets closer to the porch, we can see her snout, which was just slightly turned outward, as if it was completely at the back of Sock's head. I'm not going to lie, that looks a little spooky. One of the most beloved episodes of Bluey is Barnacus and Bumpy, where Bluey and others try to make a movie for Bingo while she's in the hospital. The film unfolds throughout the episode, and in the end, all the superstars involved in the film do the typical thank you that actors do at the end of a play for their audience, and that's when something very strange happens. Muffin, who participates in the play, is wearing a chef's hat because that was her role in the film. In the final scene, we see that the hat falls slightly over her eyes because it's too big, but if you pause at the right moment, you'll see that one of her eyes is covered by the hat, and the other is above it. Now that's a funny error. One of the episodes that definitely made me feel sorry for Bandit is the one where, as a good father, he tries to make a duck-shaped cake. But he fails miserably. But the error isn't there. When Bandit suggests to Bluey that he will give her gold golden star stickers for each toy she saves, which is a good deal, notice that the sticker sheet is complete, and when he arrives in the kitchen right after, the sheet has one less star. So far, we can't say it's a mistake, since he could have put a sticker on the way from the living room to the kitchen at some point. But then, when he returns to the living room to talk to Bluey, and is holding the bowl where he's making the cake batter, we see him holding the sticker sheet again, and it's complete once more. Now we can definitely say that it was an error. In the episode Burger Shop, we see Bandit trying to convince the girls to leave the bathtub, but Bluey and Bingo end up convincing Bandit to join and play with them a little longer. When Chilli threatens to get into the tub to remove everything from it, something weird happens. Bandit's head changes color. As everyone knows, Bandit is blue just like Bluey, but both of them have a slightly darker shade of blue on their heads, and Bandit's head is entirely blue. But if you pause the scene at the right moment, you'll see that his head quickly changes from half dark to half light blue. That's a weird looking Bandit right there. So, this is it for today's video. And as always, we'll catch you soon in the next one.